Welcome to the Conscious Kinky Podcast, where we explore sexuality, connection, and power through awareness and intentional choice.
At the Kink Collective, we help people reframe their relationship with sexuality, build deeper connections, and become safe spaces in the world.
Each episode invites reflection, not performance.
And the conversation continues inside Conscious Conversations, our live community space. Welcome to the conversation.
What if seeing the pattern is not the change?
What if awareness is only the moment before the real work begins?
Because a lot of people can say this: I know I do that, and I know where it comes from. I know why I react that way. I know this is my pattern.
But the question is, what do you choose when the pattern's available?
Not when you're calm, not when you're journaling, not when you're reflecting on it, not when you can explain it later.
But in the moment, right? When the old response is right there, when you're feeling defensive, when that's what's available, right? When avoidance is available, or control, or even pleasing, right? Or sometimes you feel like shutting down, when those things are available.
That's where awareness becomes action.
And today we're talking about choice, right? Welcome to the Conscious Kinky Podcast. I'm Kat.
And I'm Joshua.
So this podcast exists, to help people understand themselves more clearly, relate more honestly, and stop repeating the patterns that they don't fully understand yet.
Today we're beginning month 10. I think we're both sick. Month 10. The theme is choice, discipline, and integrity.
So over the last few months, we've been building something. Month 7 was the mirror. We looked at projection, triggers, ownership, and the question, what part of this is actually mine?
Month 8 was impact. We explored intention versus impact. We explored the energy we bring into the room, feedback, defensiveness, and becoming safer to be honest with.
Month 9 was repair. We looked at the difference between an apology and actual repair. We looked at responsibility without shame, what changed behavior looked like, what follow-through looks like, and what it means to live the repair.
And now month 10 asks, what do I choose now?
Because once I can see the pattern, what do I do?
Once I understand my impact, what do I choose?
Once I know what repair requires, how do I move?
Because growth becomes real through the choices we repeat.
Not the choices we understand. Not the ones we talk about or the ones we say we value.
The choices we actually make. So let's jump into month 10, some context on what it is. The theme for month 10 is your growth becomes real through the choices you repeat.
That line matters because a lot of us confuse insight with embodiment. We think because we can name something, it automatically means we've changed it.
But naming the pattern is not the same as interrupting it. Understanding the wound is not the same as choosing differently. Explaining the reaction is not the same as taking responsibility in real time.
So month 10 is about the bridge between awareness and action, between intention and practice, between values and what we actually do, right? Between who we say we are and how we actually move.
This month we're going to continue exploring ourselves in 4 connected ideas.
So week 1 is choice, the moment that awareness becomes action.
Week 2 is discipline, devotion to who I'm becoming.
Week 3, we're going to talk about integrity, when my behavior matches my values.
And week 4 is the repeated choice, building a life that reflects the work that we're doing here.
So today, we begin with choice.
Because every practice of growth eventually comes down to a moment where you feel the old pattern rise, a moment where you know what you usually do, a moment where you can see the familiar road, and another road is available.
That moment may be small. It might be quiet. For me, it usually always is. It may happen in your body before it happens in your words.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with this for myself too. But that's the moment where the work becomes real. I can think of moments in my own life where I had the awareness. I still do. I knew the pattern. I knew the language. I could explain what was happening inside of me. All of it. And still, when the pressure came down to it, the old choice was right there.
That's important. Because sometimes awareness can make us think that we're further along than we actually are.
I'm guilty of that, exactly. And I might know I get intense when I care. Yeah. I move fast when I feel urgency. I want to explain when I feel misunderstood. I want to control the outcome when I feel unsafe. And knowing that's useful, but it doesn't automatically mean I'll choose differently when I'm activated. And that's a fact.
Because the old pattern has history. It has repetition. And it has survival underneath it, which is so important to understand, right? It has a reason it became familiar.
Yeah. And that's why choice is not always easy. Sometimes choosing differently feels like going against the part of you that learned how to survive.
That can feel scary. Because the old pattern may not be healthy anymore, but it's probably familiar.
And familiar can absolutely feel safe, even when it's costing us.
For me, choice is often shown up in the pause. That moment where I can feel myself wanting to smooth something over or avoid saying a clearer truth or keep the peace instead of naming what is actually happening. This is calling me out so hard.
And in that moment, the choice isn't dramatic, it's not cinematic, and it's not a huge breakthrough.
It's simple. Do I tell the truth? Do I pause? Do I ask instead of assume? Do I stay present and set a boundary? And do I not abandon myself?
And that's the work. Choice is often quieter than we think. But those quiet choices shape who we become. And this is the work. This is the work.
All right, so let's define choice clearly. Choice is not always a wide open field of options.
Choice doesn't mean everything is easy. It doesn't mean you're not scared. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean you feel ready. Choice does not mean the nervous system is calm.
What it means is that there's a moment where you can notice what's happening and decide how you want to move.
Sometimes the choice is this. Do I react immediately or do I pause?
Sometimes it's, do I defend or do I listen first?
It can also sound like, do I control or do I ask for clarity?
Sometimes the choice is, do I disappear or do I name that I need time and return?
Another familiar one is, do I people please or do I tell the truth?
Or do I explain my intention or do I make room for the impact I've had?
Choice is the place where awareness becomes embodied. It's where you stop only knowing the work and start practicing it. So let's talk about the moment before the old pattern. One of the most important parts of this episode is learning to notice the moment before the old pattern kicks in.
Most people don't choose the pattern at the obvious point. They choose it earlier.
Before the defensive comment, there's often a body cue, a tightening, intuition, the gut feeling, heat, rush, flushing of the face, a feeling of being misunderstood.
Before the shutdown, there may be a moment of overwhelm, a blankness, right? A feeling of, I can't do this.
Before the control, there may be uncertainty. There may be fear or a need to know. A need to make the outcome predictable, for sure.
Before the people pleasing, there may be fear of disappointment, fear of rejection, fear of tension, fear that honesty will cost you the connection.
And that's where choice begins. Not after the pattern has already fully taken over, but in the first signals.
The body tells us before the behavior does, if we learn to listen.
And that's super hard. Super hard to practice.
Yeah.
So the practice becomes this. Can I notice the moment before I abandon my values? Can I recognize the doorway into the old pattern? Or can I pause before I step through it?
That pause may be the whole practice at first. Not perfection, just the pause.
And that's like, I feel a lot of my work, this is where I'm at.
Yeah.
Is that pause.
Yeah. So let's talk about the phrase, I had no choice.
Because sometimes people say, I had no choice but to react. I'm guilty of saying this. I had no choice but to shut down. I had no choice but to say yes or to explain. A familiar one for me is I had no choice but to protect myself.
Sometimes there are real limitations. There are power dynamics, there are histories, there are nervous system responses. There are moments where choice feels very narrow.
And we want to be careful here. We're not saying choice is always easy or equal. Not at all. And we're not saying people always have full freedom in every situation, because that's not true either.
Right? But in this work, we are asking, where am I saying I had no choice because the honest choice was uncomfortable?
That is a different question. Where do I have a difficult choice, but call it no choice because I don't want to feel the cost?
So maybe I had the choice to set a boundary, but I didn't want the other person to be disappointed.
Maybe I had the choice to tell the truth, but I didn't want to risk conflict.
Maybe I had the choice to pause, but I wanted the relief of reacting.
These are all ringing home for me. But maybe I had the choice to repair, but I didn't want to face shame.
I might have had the choice to slow down, but urgency felt more powerful than alignment.
That is where this episode becomes honest. Choice does not always feel good, but discomfort does not mean there is no choice.
Sometimes the discomfort means this is exactly where the choice begins.
Let's talk about old protections disguised as right choices. A lot of our old protections disguise themselves in that frame.
Right? So defensiveness might say, well, I'm just explaining myself.
Control might say, I'm just creating safety.
If you're avoiding, you might say something like, I'm just giving it time.
People pleasers might say, I'm just being kind.
And if you're one of those people that overfunction, you might say, well, I'm just helping.
As a person who's shut down in the past, I know sometimes I've said, I'm just protecting my peace.
If I'm feeling really intense, I might say, well, I'm just passionate.
And most of the part, they do have some truth in them. But they can also become ways we avoid the harder choice.
And that's why we have to ask, is this choice aligned or is it familiar?
Is this choice honest or is it protective?
Is this choice creating more safety or just more control?
Is the choice building trust or is it preserving my comfort?
This is the discernment, right? Not every familiar response is wrong, but not every familiar response is wisdom.
Sometimes it's just the old pattern showing up in a different perspective through a different lens, just sounding nicer.
All right, so choice is also deeply connected to self-trust.
Every time you see the pattern and choose differently, you build self-trust.
Not because the choice is perfect, but because you're proving to yourself that you can interrupt this, you can stay present, you can tell the truth, you can pause, and you can choose from your values.
Self-trust is not built by never being activated at all. Self-trust is built by what you do when you are activated.
That's an important distinction, right? Because many people think, well, if I were really healed, I wouldn't feel this.
Yeah, but sometimes the healing sounds like this. I feel this, and I do not let it drive.
I feel the urge to defend, and instead I choose to listen.
I feel the urge to disappear, and I choose to name that I need a pause.
Sometimes I want to please, but instead I tell the truth kindly.
I feel the urge to control, and I choose to ask for clarity instead.
And that's how choice becomes self-trust, one moment at a time.
One moment at a time. Choice also builds relational trust, because people experience our choices.
They experience whether we pause or react, whether we listen or defend, whether we return or we just disappear. They experience whether we respect their boundaries or punish them, whether we repair or avoid or just apologize, right?
You can tell people you're growing, but your choices are what they live with.
And that's why month 10 follows month 9. Repair taught us that changed behavior matters.
Month 10 asks, what choices make that changed behavior possible? If I want people to experience me as safer, what do I choose when I'm activated?
If I want people to experience me as honest, what do I choose when truth is uncomfortable?
If I want people to experience me as accountable, what do I choose when my impact is named?
If I want people to experience me as trustworthy, what do I choose when no one is forcing me?
When no one's forcing. That's where integrity begins. Not in a big statement. It is simply in a choice that you make. Because a choice is not a one-time event.
Another important piece is that choice is not a one-time event, right?
Every choice matters, but repeated choices shape identity.
You choose the pause once, but then you choose it again, and again, and again. And eventually, pausing becomes more available.
You choose honesty once, then again, and then again. And eventually truth becomes less terrifying.
And the same thing, you choose repair once, and then you choose it again and again, and eventually repair becomes part of your character.
All these practices, like, it's important to repeat them.
Right.
Right? It's like when you choose not to abandon yourself by not erasing yourself, and you do that over and over, and eventually self-respect becomes more embodied.
And this is how growth becomes real, through repetition.
And it's not one perfect choice, but it's repeated choices.
So that's why this month we'll keep building, because choice leads to discipline. Discipline supports integrity. And then integrity finally becomes a repeated way of living.
Yeah. And discipline not as punishment, but discipline as devotion to your process, to yourself.
Yeah.
So now we're going to apply this to the frameworks, ICAVS and MISS. Not by repeating definitions again, but by using them. And we're going to start with I for introspection. What introspection asks, what am I aware of before I make a choice? What's happening in my body? What old story is being active? What do I want to do immediately? What's my immediate response and desire? And what if I'm afraid? What will happen if I choose differently?
It also asks, what am I calling instinct that might actually be a pattern? What am I calling truth that might be fear? What am I calling safety that might be control?
Introspection gives you the chance to see the moment clearly before you act from it. Next is C for container.
So container asks, what structure helps me pause before repeating the pattern?
Maybe the container's a breath. Probably one of my hardest ones to do. Maybe it's a phrase or a boundary. Maybe it's a rule. I do not respond when I'm flooded.
I've used that. Maybe it sounds like I need a moment. I want to respond, not react. I am noticing the old pattern come up. Or I need to slow this down. These are all things that we can tell ourselves, right? Can I pause and come back?
A container gives choice somewhere to happen. Without structure, the old pattern often moves way faster than your values. Next is A for authenticity. Authenticity asks, am I choosing from truth or am I choosing from fear?
That question matters because fear can sound very convincing. Fear can sound like wisdom. Sometimes it sounds like intuition. It can also tell you, don't say that. Don't risk it. Get a control. Get ahead of it. Make them understand.
Yeah. Authenticity asks, what's actually true? What do I actually need? What am I choosing? Am I willing to be honest about that? Next is V for vulnerability.
So vulnerability asks, can I choose honesty even when the old protection is available?
Can I choose to be seen or to pause instead of perform? Can I choose to say, I'm scared, or I'm activated, or I need clarity or time? Can I choose to say, I want to respond differently than I usually do?
That is vulnerable because the old pattern often feels safer than the new choice.
But vulnerability is where the new choice becomes possible. Next is S for safety. And what safety asks is, does this choice create more safety for me and for others?
Not just more comfort, not just more control or less conflict,
but more actual safety, more truth, more consent, more clarity, a deeper understanding, pacing that can be felt, boundaries that can be explored and labeled and named, more room for repair.
Safety helps us ask, is this choice making connection more honest, or is it just making me less uncomfortable?
And that question can change the choice completely.
So now let's look at choice through the lens of MISS or MISS, because the choices we make also affect the pacing and quality of our connections. So first, M stands for meet. At the meet stage, choice asks, can I meet the moment clearly before acting?
Can I meet what's actually happening instead of meeting the story I'm projecting? Can I meet the person in front of me instead of the person from my past? Can I meet my own body before I make a relational decision?
Meet asks to arrive before we act. So I is for invest.
At the invest stage, choice sounds like this. It asks, am I willing to invest in the choices that build trust over time?
That means choosing the pause more than once, choosing honesty more than once, choosing repair over and over, choosing pacing over and over, choosing consistency more than one time.
And it's like we're trying to unlearn reaction.
Right.
Because investment is where choice becomes trustworthy. Next is share information.
At the share information stage, choice asks, can I communicate what I am choosing and why?
And that might sound like this. I'm choosing to slow down because I don't want to pressure this. Or I'm choosing to pause because I feel defensive. I'm choosing to tell the truth instead of smoothing this over. Or I'm choosing to ask instead of assuming.
That kind of communication helps people experience your choice more clearly. So the last S is for shared experience.
At the shared experience stage, choice asks this. Can others experience the difference in my choices?
Not just, I'm trying.
But they can feel you pause and listen. They can feel your return and how you respect the boundaries. They feel you choose differently when the old pattern is available. They see it, that's the evidence.
And that's when choice becomes relational.
So now, let's bring this back to you. We're going to transition to practice. Because every one of us has a place where the old pattern is still available. Master Joshua's answer. Every one of us has a place where we can see it and we still choose it. Every one of us has a moment where growth asks for action.
These questions are not here to shame you. They're here to help you locate the moment of choice.
Where does it begin? What happens right before? What old protection still feels convincing? What choice would bring you back into alignment?
Take your time, bring them into your journal, come to conscious conversations, and ask yourself, what do I choose now?
So get your pen and paper ready because we're going to kick off the questions, starting with set 1, awareness and orientation. For the first set, take about 3 minutes per question. The goal is to locate the moment where awareness meets choice. No need to attack yourself. This is to see where the work is asking for action. Remember, we're going to ask the question, pause, give yourself 3 minutes to answer, then come back, hear our answers, and then we'll go to the next question. And then come back in a day or two and flesh out your questions even further. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Number 1, where do I keep seeing the pattern but still choose the familiar response? Where do I know what I do, but I still do it? Where do I have awareness, but the old choices keep winning? For myself, it's when I feel unheard. Like that's the immediate, it's like an anger response, but it's a frustration. Anger it's just the umbrella term for it, but it's frustration of not feeling heard or seen.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know the origin of it, but it's there. So it's like I have to be mindful and aware of what I'm doing.
Yeah. For me, it's definitely this piece I've been talking about for months now, about me not showing up and telling the truth. I want to smooth things over. I want to not rock the boat.
When you say not tell the truth, what do you mean?
I mean, like even yesterday, I was having a bad moment in my day, and you noticed it and came over and said to me, you know, or from across the room, you said, "Oh, you okay, Mama?" And my first reaction was to say, "Yeah, I'm fine." Which is me not telling you how I'm really doing, which is me not speaking to what's really happening for me.
Yeah.
And then you came over and you pushed, as you always do, when you know that my words are not matching what my body's screaming. And then I was able to at least put a few words to it. But my first reaction, you were busy, you were doing something, you were involved. I didn't want to get, in the way of that. I wanted to keep that smoothed over. And so my first reaction is to just say, "Yeah, I'm fine," which is the same thing as not telling the truth.
Yeah.
So I'm still working on it as of yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, we're human. And I think that's why I really love doing this, is to show you guys that even though we're in the front of the class, we're out here leading this journey through this mountain of conscious conversation and the Conscious Kinky Podcast, we're still doing the work.
Yeah.
It still matters to us too.
Yeah.
Number 2, what is the moment right before I abandon my values? What happens in my body, my thoughts, my emotions, and my impulses? What happens right before I choose the old pattern? I feel like, you ever step on a ketchup packet?
Yeah.
And how it shoots out? That's what it feels like. I feel like I'm being squeezed, and all of it is just getting pushed out of my face, out of my mouth. And it's all the frustration.
Yeah.
My body tightens.
Yeah.
I become very rigid. I feel hot.
Do you relate to that as being like a fight response?
Oh yeah.
From an activation standpoint?
100%.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I feel a tightening. And I can use yesterday as the example. When you said, "You okay, Mama?" I could feel, it's almost like it catches what I want to say catches in my throat physically. I can feel it. I go, and I tighten, and I get quiet, and I almost don't even breathe for a second. And that's what it feels like in my body. Like, I should use that as my clue that there's something I need to say, now that I've said it out loud.
But yeah, I can identify that for myself. Number 3, what old protection do I keep mistaking for the right choice? Defending, controlling, disappearing, performing, pleasing, explaining? Is it rushing? Or is it shutting down? What old protection still feels like wisdom? I think it's my reaction to, it's like a control thing. If I can get loud enough, I can defend myself and get my point across so that you have no choice but to hear it.
I think for me, as you were reading that list, as you were saying that list of options, the one that jumped out at me was explaining. Another thing that I do, different than the not speaking up, is to explain something, right? When I've either been misunderstood, or I don't like what someone's saying, or I don't agree with what someone's saying, rather than get curious, rather than ask, rather than listen, all the things are pause, I'll launch right into explaining. I'll explain why I think, I'll explain what I think. as if that's somehow going to make the outcome different, or that's going to change the person's mind, or get a response that I prefer, that I want more than the one that I'm getting, right? So I can really use explaining as my way around that. So I related to that. I mean, in some ways, I feel like I use all of these things.
Yeah, in some capacity. Number 4, where do I tell myself I had no choice when I actually had a difficult one? Where might I be confusing discomfort for lack of choice? Where did I have options, but one of them required more honesty, courage, or responsibility? If I were to stick to the fight response, it's the ability to pause and like, the responsibility would be to pause and ask, well, what's going on your end? What do you see? Because the responsibility would be to create the container to hear both sides of it. Mm-hmm. And that takes courage to not allow myself to talk myself back from that line. Like, the courage meaning the courage to handle it differently.
Yeah. For me, I think it's similar, right? It just requires more honesty, courage, and responsibility for me to show up and tell the truth when I don't want to. When I feel like, and it's always when I'm afraid that it's going to land badly, that it's going to get me in more trouble, ultimately I'm doing it to protect myself. I'm doing it to protect myself from a real or imagined response that someone would have to what I'm going to say. I did this with my cousin not that long ago. I have a long-standing issue with my family that has to, long story how we got to it, but I hadn't really communicated that to anyone, how I really felt about it. Certainly not to this particular cousin. And for some reason, I think it was that it was late at night and I was tired and I was texting, and I just said, like, a part of me just said, like, what the hell? Like, what do I got to lose to show up and speak this truth, right? But I was really afraid that I would be rejected. I was really afraid that, like, what I would get was like a shutdown. This is a relationship that's just started back up again after a lot of years of just sort of being by the wayside. And I really was afraid of the reaction that I would get. But it was a truth. I mean, I was explaining what my experience has been like, what I had wanted, what happened, what it's like now, and it wasn't meant that way. But I had to face my fear. I had to be honest. It took courage. And in a way, it was me being responsible, right? It was me showing up and telling the truth about how I feel and why I feel the way that I do. And we have a date to have an outstanding conversation about it, a follow-up conversation about it. But it didn't result in, I don't want to talk to you, or, I wasn't shut down or kicked out because of it. And that's always been my fear.
Yeah. So on our Tuesday night calls, Conscious Conversation, we have 2 more bonus questions that we ask, but we don't divulge them here on the podcast because they're real good questions. So to see them, to hear them, come on Tuesdays.
He likes making people shoot from the hip.
Yeah, I'm a big hip shooter, question kind of guy.
All right, before moving into the second round, let's pause for a moment. Take a breath. Let the first set settle. So in one sentence, what did you notice about yourself during that set of questions? And in one word, what are you leaving that set of questions with?
And let that be enough. You don't have to turn it into a full explanation. Just notice what surfaced.
Yeah.
And as we're talking through these questions, I'm thinking about all the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn responses, not just the anger. Let's jump into the second set of questions.
So the second set is about integration. Not just seeing the old choice, but practicing the new one. Again, take about 3 minutes per question. So the next question is, what choice would bring me back into alignment with who I say I am becoming? What would be honest, grounded, responsible? What choice reflects the person I say I'm becoming?
So, like, ideally, in what... how I would want to respond in scenarios like that is to say, hold on, and just stop everything. Hold on. Tell me what's going on. And to really take it from a position of an adult. Because I feel myself just regress. I turn into a teenager. I turn into a child. And it's like, I don't want to feel that in my body anymore.
I like that. For me, I think this is where we talk about the choosing over and over again. Like, I want to pat myself on the back because I showed up and told my cousin the truth. But I have to make that choice over and over again. And that's the choice that would reflect the person I say I'm becoming. Where I don't try to brush you off when you ask me what's going on. Where I lean into being able to tell the truth about situations, about what's happening with me, or what's, it's mostly about what's happening with me. It's revealing a part of myself that I'm afraid to reveal. And so becoming the person that I say I want to become would be to risk that more regularly. Yeah. So what support or structure would help me to choose differently when I'm activated? A pause, a breath, a script that you make up for yourself, right? Or a boundary, maybe a check-in. Maybe there's someone who knows when you're activated and you can check in with them. You give yourself a reminder, the accountability partner, right? Or a specific repair practice. What would help the new choice become available? One of the things that I've done with activation, once I became aware of it, there was a period of time, for the majority of my life, I didn't know what this meant, this activation, right? I would react and just think I was like reacting, like or trying to have a response. I didn't understand like nervous system activation and what that all meant, right? And usually what comes with activation for me is this impulse to have to say something to somebody right now, to try to fix something right now. And I would get myself into trouble with that all the time because I would try to fix something, but I was basically splashing my activation all around, which didn't feel good to the people around me. It didn't feel good to whoever it was I was trying to come at with my stuff. So once I became aware of what activation was, pause worked for me. I made a rule for myself that whenever I felt that sense of agitation, I could text, but I couldn't hit send. I could do anything but reach out to another person, any person. And I started to sit with the discomfort. And that became my rule about what to do when I was activated. It still is.
Yeah. I'm still... Like, one of the practices we spoke about, I think, last year sometime was stopping and asking what, and it comes back to, what's going on? Like, what did you hear me say? Or what's going through your mind about what was said? So it's almost like a check-in. Like, where is the communication being missed? And I want to use the word self-control, self-regulation. The ability to pause it and ask the question is what would help make the new choice become available. It's like to desire clarity, I think would be the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Is I need more clarity before I know what the next action is going to be.
I like that. Having been on the other side of it, what I know is there's usually never an intention to not hear. There's just usually a misunderstanding that went on around words that were used or what things meant or whatever. But the intention is never to make you feel unheard or to not hear you.
Yeah.
And I know the intention on the other side is not to make me feel bad for speaking my truth, right? I know that's nobody really wants to do that. I think I have to believe that nobody's really going to just kick me to the curb because I showed up and told the truth.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. All right, next question. What is one situation this week where I can practice choosing from my values instead of from my pattern? Where can I make the work visible through action? What is the real life practice?
So I'm hoping not to go looking for landmines. But it's really to take a pause to really put into the clarity seat. Like, what am I missing here that's making me feel this way? But I feel like that's also internal dialogue. And how do I get that into talking?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, it's feeling the choked up feeling in my throat when I don't want to speak, and stopping and making myself, asking the person to take a second to let me check in with myself and see what I really need to say. And that's another thing that I don't do readily, is ask for a pause. We've been talking about this for months now, right?
Yeah.
Asking for a pause. And I think that's the tool that I can use, is to ask for a pause, check in with myself, and see what it is I really need to say. Because a lot of times when I feel that feeling, that choked up feeling, I don't have the words readily available anyway, and that's part of what fuels me not speaking my truth, is I haven't figured out the words. I just know I have a feeling and I don't know what the words are. And so rather than say nothing, maybe I ask for a pause and then I find my words. So what becomes possible if I stop waiting to feel ready before choosing differently? What could I change if choice led instead of mood, or instead of fear or urgency or being concerned with my comfort?
Just relief. Like the comfort and confidence knowing that I'm not going to make a mess whenever there's conflict.
No. For me, I think it would be a certain degree of freedom. What little I've had of it already, it feels like freedom. I feel like I can put my shoulders down and breathe in deeper and let go of some of the more negative voices in my head about who I am or who I tell myself I am, because I can be heard. Yeah.
So let's jump into our question review. These were good questions. Before we close, let's review the questions for the upcoming Conscious Conversation session, month 10, episode 1. Choice. The moment awareness becomes action. The first set of questions, awareness and orientation. Where do I keep seeing the pattern but still choosing the familiar response?
What is the moment right before I abandon my values?
What old protection do I keep mistaking for the right choice?
Where do I tell myself I had no choice when I just actually had a difficult one? And then we have the two between round reflection questions, right? What's one sentence? What did you notice about yourself during that set of questions? And what's one word you're going to leave the set with?
Let's jump into set 2, integration and practice. What choice would bring me back into alignment with who I say I'm becoming?
What support or structure would help me choose differently when I'm activated?
What is one situation this week where I can practice choosing from my values instead of my patterns?
And last question, what becomes possible if I stop waiting to feel ready before choosing differently?
This is an important one. The ability to embody the changes.
Yeah.
Get that way, fly.
I know. Choice is where awareness becomes real. Not because you always choose perfectly, but because you begin to recognize the moment where the old pattern is no longer automatic.
You begin to see, this is where I usually defend, or this is where I avoid, or control, or where I usually try to please. This is where I usually abandon myself and my values.
I've just recently had a lesson about that. And then you ask, what do I choose now?
That's exactly what we practice inside Conscious Conversations every Tuesday night, and in September, Saturday afternoons. A live guided space where you can reflect, you can speak, you can hear yourself, you can hear others, you can share perspectives, notice your patterns, and practice these questions in real time. And stay connected to the work long enough for it to actually make something change.
Conscious Conversations meets every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and he said in September on Saturday afternoon. For $30 a month, you get access to the live weekly discussion group. It's a place to reflect, practice, and stay connected to the work.
And for those who want more support, the Integration Circle gives you the Tuesday and Saturday conversations, a private WhatsApp group, a community, and a monthly live session with us where you can ask questions, process what's coming up, and get support integrating what you're learning. We're actually going to be kicking that off in September with the new episode on Saturdays, because we want people to have a place to come in and start to flesh that out. So we're building out our waiting list for the integration circle.
Awesome. So new podcast episodes are released on Wednesdays, and each week you will have the episode to sit with before bringing the work into the Tuesday night conversation.
Or Saturdays.
Or Saturdays, right? You just have a little less time from Wednesday to Saturday, right? But seeing the pattern matters.
But seeing it is not the same as choosing differently.
The old response may still be available. Defense, avoidance may be available. Control might still be available. Or silence may still be available.
But now, another choice can become available too.
Yeah. So instead of only asking, why do I do this?
Ask yourself this. What do I choose now?
That question is where the work becomes embodied.
And one choice at a time, you begin becoming someone you can trust. Next week, we continue month 10 with discipline. Not discipline as punishment or shame, but discipline as devotion to who you're becoming.
Oh, I like that. Discipline as devotion. That's a good one. Because choice becomes stronger when it has practice. Practice becomes more sustainable when it has structure.
So next week, we'll ask, what if discipline is not a threat to my freedom, but the structure that helps me live my values?
That's where we're going next. Can hardly wait. New podcast episodes, as I said, are released every Wednesday. And this work continues inside Conscious Conversations every Tuesday at 7 p.m. and in Saturdays starting in September. So thanks for joining us. We look forward to seeing you soon.
See you soon. All right.